As a result, they were terrible people, those two sons, and became ungodly leaders. And God ended up judging them harshly, where they died in battle. Ironically, the prophet Samuel, who looked up to Eli and was his mentor, had the same trouble with his boys when he grew old. So be careful who is your mentor. You might end up repeating their mistakes. Discipline is important to correct the wrongs before they become too deep-rooted in a child's life that you will not be able to remove it anymore. And it will change their life course many times, not for good, but for wrong. So discipline in due time and correct the wrongs so that your children will follow in the ways of God. Next one is preparation. That is between David and Solomon. You see, David was a man after God's own heart, but he wasn't perfect as a person or as a dad. He made many mistakes with his children. And because of the mistakes he has done, it created a lot of family issues and problems within his children. But one thing that he did right was to prepare his son Solomon to become king after him. First, he prepared him to build the temple by supplying most of what he needed for the job. That is to say, prepare your children for the future tasks that God might have for them. Lead the way, prepare the path, smooth the path for them that they need to walk on, but don't remove all the challenges. God will work with them, but you prepare the way. Later, he prepared Solomon to rule well by warning him about all the dangerous people in his kingdom. And by God's grace, Solomon, who became the wisest man who ever lived, enjoyed the blessings of the foundation that his father had built. Build a strong foundation for your child. Prepare things in advance to make sure your children will have a successful life, not in the material things, but a successful life in spiritual things. God will add the rest. Just in the case of Solomon, when he asked for wisdom from the Lord to know right from wrong and how to guide his people, and because God told him in reply, because you did not ask for long life, because you did not ask for riches for the life of your enemies, I will give you these things anyway. God will add the riches and all the things that come along with following truly in the ways of God. Next one is the story of the prodigal son, which for us as fathers and parents, we need to have hope. Hope that our children will follow in the things that they have learned while at home. Yes, this father and son story from the Bible is about a family that Jesus spoke in one of his parables, found in Luke 15. And it is a great example of how fathers never give up on their children. While one physically ran away, even the one who stayed at home was disconnected spiritually and emotionally from his father. So just because you're home doesn't mean you're better than the one who left. They were both in need of God's salvation. In both cases, the father never stopped praying for his children, never stopped believing that God would make a miracle and bring them back to him. In fact, the prodigal son returned. At least one of them did, while the other still did not make a decision. We can still hope that the things we have instilled in our children will be carried on in their life. And at times we might look at our children's lives and wonder, where did we go wrong? Why is my son or daughter not following in the ways I have taught them to follow? But this story teaches us that we can have hope that God will work in due time and bring them back in due season. And the last one is mentoring, which every father should do. That's what Paul did for Timothy. Some fathers and sons from the Bible weren't related by blood, but they were united at the heart. And this is to you fathers or father figures that perhaps you don't have children, or perhaps you are becoming fathers, or perhaps you never had an opportunity to mentor and train a child. These two people, Timothy and Paul, were united at the heart. The great apostle considered this young pastor his spiritual son. Peter also felt the same way with Mark. That's a reminder that it is necessary to invest in the life of others. First priority, of course, is to our children, but we can also make an impact in other children by being an example to them and mentoring them in the ways of God when maybe someone else can't. So today, since men like to be practical, I like to get practical with men and fathers. And as we as fathers do help our children develop well in their mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical standpoint, we should probably realize what is our duty as fathers towards our children. Well, there are certain requirements to the position of a father. And that is not an exhaustive list, what I will tell you now, but it is my list for a father, and there's a lot more I can add. One, the father is the head of the family. Also, he is the lawmaker and the priest of the household. Also, he is the one that needs to recognize his need of Jesus to instill that into his children. He needs to understand that he needs to be the mature one and not the childish one. You can be childlike, but not childish. That's two different things. He will exercise authority with humility and will lead on softly, and he will take on himself his responsibilities of a father and not pass them on to another. Now, let's break these things down so we can better understand the assignments God has given fathers. The first one is that the father is the head of the family. In Genesis 3:16, it tells us that after sin had occurred, God came in the garden and told the woman the following. He told the woman and he said, I will greatly multiply your sorrow and your conception. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. Fathers are placed in the family not to rule over the wife as a harsh dictator, but as a humble leader who works together with his wife to educate and train the children to walk in the ways of God. In Adventist Home, page 211, it says that the father and the husband is the head of the household. The wife looks to him for love and sympathy and for aid in the training of the children, and this is right. Children will come to the father for support and guidance as well as the mother. But as much as fathers are concerned, fathers should have the right principles in life and in their hearts so that they may impart them to their children as leaders, as future leaders in their future homes. He will guard his children from wrong influences and wrong friends and lead them to the path of righteousness. With so many dangers lurking there in the wide open spaces. It's no longer lurking in the darkness, trying to snatch our children. It's wide open. All the dangers in our schools, the dangers in society, the dangers on TV, the dangers everywhere children go. As fathers, we need to protect them from these dangers and put certain barriers and fences around our children to make sure they will not be swept away by the wickedness that abounds in our world. Father, if you have to be like a roaring lion to all these evil things, but be like a gentle shepherd towards your children and guide them in the way everlasting. This brings me to the next point. The Father